In the endless darkness of space, a single cry for help broke the silence. It was not a voice anyone could hear, but a message, faint and broken, drifting through the void like a whisper carried by the stars. The message came from a planet called Virelia, home to a race known as the Virelians. Once their world had been a paradise, green forests, silver rivers, and tall shining towers that touched the clouds. But now it was dying. A strange plague was spreading across the surface, destroying everything it touched. It was not a sickness of the body, but of the world itself. The oceans turned thick and dark. The forests melted into ash, and even the air shimmered with a strange metallic mist. The Virelians were desperate. They had used all their science, all their wisdom, and all their faith, but nothing could stop the destruction. So as their last hope, they sent a message into space, a universal distress call. It was a simple signal, but filled with emotion, a coded plea that said, "We are dying. Please help us." Light years away, on a small blue planet called Earth, the message was caught by one of the deep space listening stations. The scientists at the station were used to hearing static, distant signals and random cosmic noise. But this one was different. It had rhythm. It had structure. It had meaning. They quickly realized it was not natural, it was intelligent. Humanity had dreamed for centuries of hearing a message from another world, but when it finally came, it was not a greeting. It was a cry for help. The discovery spread quickly. Within hours, the message reached the United Earth Council, the joint leadership of the world's nations. For decades, Earth had been united under one flag, one purpose: peace and exploration. They had built great ships and stations, reaching far into their solar system. They had technology that could travel across stars, though not without effort. But never before had they been called to save another species. The council gathered in the Great Chamber in Geneva. The air was filled with tension. Holograms of the signal flickered in the room as experts explained what they had decoded so far. The message came from a system about 80 light-years away. The Virelians were advanced, perhaps even more advanced than humans in some ways, but their planet was falling apart. There were arguments. Some leaders said it could be a trap. Others feared the plague might spread to Earth if they tried to help. But many couldn't ignore the feeling that they had a moral duty to respond. "If they were us," one council member said softly, "we would hope someone would come." Those words stayed in everyone's mind. After hours of discussion, they made the decision that would change history. Earth would send help. Humanity would not ignore a call for aid, even if it came from the stars. The announcement reached every corner of the planet. News broadcasts called it the first rescue beyond Earth. People cried, prayed, and celebrated. Artists painted murals of distant hands reaching for each other. Children watched the skies and whispered the name of the alien world. For the first time in generations, humanity felt united by something pure, a wish to save another species. Admiral Elias Rourke, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, was chosen to lead the mission. He was known for his calm courage and strong sense of duty. When asked if he believed they could make a difference, he said, "If there's even one life out there waiting for us, we owe it to them to try." Under his command, preparations began immediately. In the shipyards orbiting Mars and Luna, engineers worked day and night to ready the rescue fleet. Massive starships stood like silver mountains against the black sky. Each one was equipped with medical units, environmental shelters, and scientific labs. Doctors trained to treat alien physiology. Linguists practiced decoding the Virelian language, and soldiers learned new safety protocols for unknown worlds. The fleet was not a war expedition. It was a mission of mercy. On Earth, people gathered to watch the launch. From every continent, billions of eyes looked upward as the engines of the fleet ignited. The ships rose slowly, glowing like bright stars. Families waved goodbye to loved ones who might never return. It was a moment that reminded humanity of both its smallness and greatness, the courage to cross the unknown for the sake of compassion. As the fleet left the solar system, silence returned to Earth. Inside the ships, the crew watched the stars stretch into streaks of light as they entered faster than light travel. The journey would take weeks, and during that time they studied every detail of the Virelian signal. The message contained fragments of images, strange cities of glass and metal, creatures with graceful limbs and luminous eyes, and a world covered in silver-green vegetation. The Virelians looked peaceful, artistic, and deeply emotional. But near the end of the signal, the images became distorted. There were flashes of burning skies, melting structures, and screams of panic. The last part of the transmission was heartbreaking. A voice, trembling and filled with sorrow, whispering in a language the scientists translated as, "Please don't forget us." Every crew member carried those words in their heart. Some couldn't sleep, thinking of the billions of lives waiting for them. Some felt pride, while others felt fear. They didn't know what awaited them at the other end of the journey. They only knew they had to try. Admiral Rourke often stood alone on the observation deck watching the stars glide past. He thought about the Varelians, about how similar they might be to humans, dreaming, building, loving, and now dying. He also thought about the responsibility of their mission. If they failed, an entire species would vanish forever. He whispered to himself, "We can't be too late." Back on Earth, scientists continued to monitor the transmission. Strangely, the SOS signal did not stop. It kept repeating over and over like a heartbeat echoing across the cosmos. Some experts found it unsettling. The pattern in the signal began to show strange variations like layers of hidden code beneath the plea for help. But by the time they noticed, the fleet was already far from home, too distant to warn. Meanwhile, in the fleet's main science vessel, the Odyssey, a young xenobiologist named Dr. Lena Hart worked tirelessly to understand the Varelian biology. She was fascinated by the glimpses of alien anatomy and culture found in the signal. She believed that saving them would not only be a rescue, it would be the greatest act of unity between species in the universe. "They called out to us," she said to her colleague. "That means they trusted us. We can't fail that trust." Her optimism inspired many on board, especially those who began to doubt the mission. As the fleet approached the final stretch of their journey, the mood shifted from hope to nervous silence. Instruments began detecting strange energy readings from the direction of the Varelian system. Space seemed to shimmer faintly ahead as if reality itself was trembling. Some said it was just interference, others feared it was something worse. Admiral Rourke gave the order to proceed carefully. Finally, after weeks of travel, the ships dropped out of faster-than-light speed near the coordinates of the distress call. The sight before them was breathtaking and horrifying. A planet floated in the darkness, glowing faintly red and gray like an ember that refused to die. Its surface was covered in storm clouds and strange lightning that danced across continents. The oceans had turned black. Whole regions shimmered with metallic dust that caught the light of the dying sun. No one spoke for a long time. They all understood at that moment how serious the situation was. The planet they had come to save might already be beyond saving. Still, Admiral Rourke straightened his shoulders and gave the command to prepare for descent. "We came this far," he said quietly, "and we'll see this through." The fleet moved closer, their ships cutting through the stormy glow. Every heart beat faster as they prepared to make contact with an alien world for the first time in human history. Somewhere below those clouds, an entire species was waiting, hoping, and praying that the humans who had answered their call would not be too late. The darkness of space swallowed the fleet as they descended toward the dying planet, their lights shining like fragile stars, symbols of hope in a universe that had almost forgotten mercy. Humanity had answered the SOS, but none of them knew that this one act of kindness would soon become the mistake that would haunt them forever. The fleet moved silently through the blackness of space, their engines glowing faint blue against the stars. Each ship carried hundreds of people, scientists, doctors, engineers, soldiers, and pilots, all driven by one purpose: to save a dying species. It was the largest rescue mission in human history. From the command ship Erebus, Admiral Elias Rourke watched the stars ahead, his hands folded behind his back. He had led battles and peace missions before, but this was different. There were no enemies, no politics, only a desperate race to help lives that no one had ever seen before. He looked calm, but inside him was a storm of questions. What if they were too late? What if the plague was something beyond their understanding? What if they carried it back home? Still, he knew he could not turn back. Each day on the journey felt long. The crew kept busy, running drills, studying alien biology, and testing decontamination tools. The fleet was made of 10 ships, each with a special role. The Odyssey was the science vessel, full of laboratories and observatories. The Haven carried medical facilities and healing units. The Valor was built for defense, though no one expected to fight. Others were cargo carriers, communication ships, and engineering vessels. Together they formed a moving city of humans traveling between the stars. On the Odyssey, Dr. Lena Hart sat at her desk, surrounded by holographic screens filled with alien symbols. She was one of the youngest scientists on board, but her intelligence and optimism made her respected by everyone. She had studied every fragment of the Varelian message. The way their language curved and flowed reminded her of music. They must be artists, she told her assistant. They build with emotion, not just logic. Sometimes she listened to the recorded part of the alien voice, the one that said, "Please don't forget us." Every time she heard it, her eyes grew wet. It wasn't just a signal, it was a heartbeat. In another part of the ship, the engineering crew checked their radiation shields and energy drives. The stars outside weren't ordinary. They passed through regions filled with strange bursts of light like invisible storms. The navigation officers worked day and night to avoid them. Commander Darius Pike, Rourke's second-in-command, joked that they were flying through a haunted ocean of light. But even he couldn't hide his nervousness. Every flicker on the sensors made the crew tense. Despite the dangers, the fleet continued. Rourke often sent daily messages back to Earth, updates filled with data and short personal words to reassure the people waiting. Billions of humans watched the mission on live feeds, cheering every step forward. Children drew pictures of alien worlds and humans shaking hands with creatures of light. The world had not been this united in generations. Every news channel carried one message: humanity is not alone, and we choose compassion. But not everyone shared the same excitement. Some scientists on Earth began to worry about the signal's strange code patterns. They noticed something hidden deep inside the transmission, a repeating sequence that didn't match any known language or format. It looked like a system command, not a message. They sent warnings to the fleet, but because of the distance, the communication delay was weeks long. By the time the message reached Admiral Rourke, he would already be standing over the dying world. Inside the fleet, tension and hope danced together. The crew members passed time by sharing stories, writing letters to home, or simply staring at the stars. For many, this was their first time leaving the solar system. They missed the colors of Earth, the blue oceans, green forests, and golden cities. Out here, everything was silent and endless. Some nights, crew members gathered in the observation decks to watch the light of distant suns and whisper prayers for the aliens they were going to save. Dr. Lena Hart began organizing a team to prepare for contact. She selected doctors, linguists, and robotic assistants who could safely interact with the Varelians without spreading disease. They practiced greetings, studied the basics of body language, and even designed small gifts, crystals encoded with images of Earth's beauty, mountains, rivers, and the faces of smiling children. She wanted the Varelians to see that humans came with kindness, not fear. Admiral Rourke approved her plan but warned, "We must remember, kindness without caution can be dangerous. We're walking into the unknown." His words lingered in Lena's mind. She respected the Admiral deeply, but she believed that fear would only stop them from doing good. "Sometimes," she told him quietly, "we have to trust that the universe rewards those who care." As the fleet drew nearer to the Varelian system, the strange energy readings grew stronger. The stars in that region flickered in ways no human instrument had ever recorded. The crew began to notice that their communications occasionally glitched. Voices echoed, lights dimmed, data streams froze for seconds. It was as if the space around them was alive, reacting to their presence. Some joked that the Varelian gods were watching. Others said nothing, afraid of what that silence might mean. Finally, after several weeks of travel, the fleet received a faint transmission. It wasn't part of the original SOS, it was something new, a weak signal with different tones. The linguists worked all night to decode it. When they succeeded, the words were clear enough to make everyone's blood run cold. "Hurry, the sky is breaking." The message came directly from the Varelian homeworld. The voice was old, tired, but still full of life. It repeated every few hours, growing weaker each time. The fleet accelerated. Every system was pushed to its limit. Rourke gave strict orders to prepare for landing protocols. Ships adjusted formation, drones were deployed, and the crew suited up in advanced biohazard gear. The medical teams prepared sterilization chambers, while the scientists loaded databases of alien language into the translation software. Everyone could feel that history was about to change forever. When they finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the crew gasped at the sight before them. The Varelian star burned dimly, its light flickering across the ruins of planets and moons nearby. The main world was wrapped in clouds of dust and lightning, glowing faintly like a dying ember. From orbit, massive scars were visible across its surface, wounds that stretched for thousands of miles. Entire continents looked melted as though fire had swept through them. For a moment, no one spoke. The control rooms were silent except for the soft beeping of instruments. Dr. Hart covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. "It's so beautiful," she whispered, "and so broken." Admiral Rourke's voice came over the intercom, calm but heavy. "Prepare for descent. Send greetings on all frequencies. Let them know we've arrived." The communication teams began transmitting peaceful signals in every known universal frequency. The words were simple: "We are humans. We heard your call. We come in peace and friendship." For several minutes there was no answer. The fleet floated in silence, engines humming softly as they orbited the dying world. Then suddenly a faint light flickered on their screens, a signal responding to them. The sound that followed was haunting yet beautiful. It was the voice of a woman, soft and melodic, filled with exhaustion. The translation came through slowly. "You came? You actually came." Everyone froze. The voice continued, "But it may already be too late." The message was followed by coordinates pointing to a region near the planet's equator. Admiral Rourke immediately ordered a landing mission. As the first ships began to descend into the atmosphere, lightning storms raged below. The clouds glowed with unnatural colors, purple, red, and silver. It felt as if the planet was alive, angry, or afraid. When the landing crafts broke through the clouds, the sight below left everyone speechless. Giant cities stood half buried in ash, their towers turned to stone. Rivers were black and motionless. The forests shimmered with strange metallic dust, as if frozen in mid-bloom. Dr. Hart recorded everything, whispering to herself, "It's like the whole world is dying in slow motion." The air sensors reported strange readings, nanoparticles, radiation, and unknown compounds. Yet in the distance, lights flickered, signs of life. The crew followed the coordinates, their ships gliding over ruined valleys until they reached a large dome-like structure still standing. Inside, they could see movement. For the first time, humans looked upon living Varelians. They were tall and graceful, their skin faintly glowing under the flickering light. Their eyes reflected sorrow and exhaustion, yet also wonder. They looked fragile, like beings made of glass and light. When the humans stepped out of their crafts, the Varelians did not run. They simply watched in silence. Then one of them, perhaps their leader, stepped forward and placed a hand over her chest in greeting. The humans did the same. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Dr. Hart, her voice trembling, said, "We're here to help you." The alien leader nodded slowly and whispered something that the translator struggled to interpret. After a few seconds it came through. "You came, but the storm follows you." The humans did not understand what she meant, but they felt the weight of her words. Around them the ground trembled faintly, and the air shimmered with static. Admiral Rourke looked toward the horizon, where clouds of silver dust swirled in strange patterns. Something about it didn't seem natural.
He couldn't know it yet.
But their arrival had already awakened something deep within the planet, something that would soon turn their mission of mercy into a nightmare. The human ships floated silently above the dying planet. From space, the world looked like a cracked jewel, beautiful but broken beyond repair. The fleet had sent messages for hours, hoping to speak again with the voice that had called for help. Finally, a signal came through, faint and full of static. It was her, the Varelian leader Alaris. Her voice was soft but carried deep sadness. "We welcome you, children of another sun," she said. "You came, though we are already lost." Those words settled heavily over every human heart. Admiral Elias Rourke stood on the command deck of the Erebus, watching the live transmission of the planet's surface. He had seen battlefields before, seen cities turned to ash by war, but nothing like this. The Varelian cities were silent, covered in silver dust that sparkled in the dim sunlight. Massive towers stood frozen mid-collapse and rivers shimmered like liquid glass. It was as if life itself had stopped breathing. "We're too late," someone whispered behind him, but Rourke shook his head. "As long as they're alive, we're not too late." He ordered immediate contact. 3 landing teams were sent down, scientists, doctors, and security units to meet the survivors. Dr. Lena Hart was chosen to lead the scientific team. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared to descend, but her eyes shone with determination. "This is what we came for," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. The landing craft entered the thick, glowing clouds. Lightning crackled around them, and the sky shimmered in strange colors, blue, green, and red. The clouds weren't made of water or gas, but fine metallic particles. It felt as if they were flying through dust that was alive. When they broke through to the surface, everyone fell silent. Below them stretched the ruins of a once great civilization, miles of strange architecture, curved towers, and vast plazas filled with frozen figures. The nanite plague had turned living things into metallic stone. Some figures looked as if they had tried to run. Others were holding each other. It was a graveyard of both beauty and horror. The Varelians who survived were hiding beneath a great dome at the edge of what used to be their capital city. The humans approached carefully, their suits sealed and scanners active. The dome opened slowly, revealing pale light and a group of beings waiting inside. The Varelians were tall, elegant, and translucent, their skin glowing faintly like moonlight through crystal. Their eyes were full of sorrow but also curiosity. They had never seen humans before, yet there was no fear, only a deep, quiet acceptance. Alaris, their leader, stepped forward. Her voice echoed softly in the translator's speaker. "You came to save us," she said, "but what you seek to heal cannot be healed." Dr. Hart removed her helmet slowly, ignoring the safety warnings. "We'll try," she said. "That's what humans do." Alaris tilted her head as if she did not understand why anyone would risk their life for strangers. Then she smiled faintly, a fragile, beautiful smile. "Then you are different from those who made the swarm." The scientists were confused. "The swarm?" Dr. Hart asked. Alaris looked down at the cracked floor. "The plague that devours our world. We made it long ago." As the hours passed, the humans learned the truth. The plague wasn't a disease or a natural disaster. It was a creation, a weapon born from the Varelians' own hands. Centuries ago, during a great civil war, their ancestors had built tiny machines, nanites that could rebuild damaged materials, clean pollution, and restore their world. But greed turned them into a weapon. Someone had rewritten their purpose, and the machines began consuming instead of repairing. They ate everything: metal, stone, plants, and even living tissue. When the war ended, no one was left to stop them. The Varelians had spent generations trying to destroy the swarm, but it only evolved, becoming part of the planet's very air. Dr. Hart listened, horrified. "Then your SOS signal," she began. Alaris nodded slowly. "It was our last voice. We sent it into the stars when our skies began to burn. We hoped someone would hear." Admiral Rourke arrived later that day to meet the survivors in person. He removed his helmet and extended his hand. The gesture was old and human, but the meaning was universal. Alaris looked at his hand for a long moment, then gently mirrored the motion, touching his palm. "Your kindness shines brighter than your stars," she said softly. Rourke smiled faintly. "We didn't come to shine," he said. "We came to help." The humans set up camp near the Varelian dome. They deployed drones to test the air, the soil, and the nanite particles. They began scanning the plague structure and feeding the data into the ship's AI systems. For a brief moment, there was hope. The scientists believed they could use electromagnetic pulses to deactivate the nanites. They prepared equipment, launched probes, and even saw small areas of ground begin to clear. Everyone felt the first spark of success. But something strange happened. The moment human equipment began working on the planet, the readings started to spike. The nanite levels began to rise instead of fall. The plague reacted to human technology like a predator sensing prey. The ground started to shimmer and the air grew hot. Drones malfunctioned and crashed, their metal shells dissolving into silver dust. Panic spread through the research teams. Dr. Hart tried to shut down the machines, but the swarm was already awake. The scientists quickly realized something terrifying. The nanites weren't reacting randomly. They were following a command, a signal embedded in the communication frequencies used by the fleet. Somehow the humans had triggered it. "The SOS signal," one of the engineers whispered. "It carried the same code. We reactivated it when we replied." The realization hit them like a wave of ice. The same message that brought humanity to save the Varelians was also the key to their destruction. The code hidden inside the SOS had waited for centuries, dormant and silent until someone answered it. By sending a reply, Humanity had awakened the swarm completely. Admiral Rourke ordered all teams to return to orbit immediately. But the withdrawal came too late. The silver clouds that had once hung quietly above the planet began to move, swirling like a storm. The swarm spread faster than ever before, consuming the ruins and heading toward the human landing sites. As the humans fled to their crafts, the ground cracked open, releasing bright streams of metallic mist that crawled like living fire. Inside the dome, Elleris stood watching as the swarm spread across the horizon. "It knows you now," she said quietly. "It remembers your touch." Her voice trembled, not in fear for herself, but for the visitors who had tried to help. Dr. Hart ran to her, trying to pull her toward the evacuation ship, but Elleris shook her head. "This is our punishment," she said. "Go, before it follows you beyond the stars." The humans barely made it back to their crafts. As they lifted off, they saw the plague climbing like a silver ocean, covering everything in its path. Even from the sky, the planet seemed to writhe with motion. The swarm had awakened, and it was alive. Back on the Erebus, chaos filled the control rooms. Multiple ships reported damage from energy surges. Some smaller vessels lost engine control, their systems corroding from within. Engineers tried to isolate the infection in the digital networks, but the swarm signal had already spread through the fleet's communications. "It's using our own systems against us," the technicians shouted. Dr. Hart sat silently in the medical bay, her hands shaking. "We answered their call," she whispered. "We wanted to help, and now we've doomed them and maybe ourselves." Admiral Rourke walked in, his face pale but firm. "We didn't doom them," he said softly. "We just didn't understand what we were walking into." He turned to the communication officer. "Open a channel to all ships. Full fleet lockdown. Cut every signal link to the planet." For the next several hours, the humans worked desperately to contain the situation. The fleet's AI systems calculated a possible solution. The swarm was feeding on electromagnetic emissions from the ships. If they shut down their power completely, the swarm might lose interest. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. "Power down everything," Rourke ordered. "Lights, engines, comms, everything except life support." One by one, the ships went dark, floating silently above the planet like ghosts. For a while it worked. The swarm slowed, its movement on the surface calming like waves after a storm. The humans watched, barely breathing, as the planet's glow dimmed. But Elleris's final message arrived before the silence was complete. Her voice was faint, broken by static. "You tried to save us," she said. "But the swarm will not stop. It was made from us, it remembers us. It knows your light now. You must leave or it will follow." Then the signal ended. The screen turned black. Dr. Hart covered her face, tears streaming down. Admiral Rourke stood silently, staring at the dying planet below. For the first time, he understood what Elleris had meant when she said they were already lost. The humans had come with hearts full of hope, but in answering the SOS, they had awoken a sleeping nightmare. Outside, the world of Virelia began to collapse under its own weight. Mountains melted, oceans turned to silver smoke, and the sky filled with fire. The SOS signal stopped transmitting, but a faint pulse continued to echo through deep space, traveling faster than light, like a ghost of the message that had started it all. And humanity, for the first time in its history, realized that not every cry for help can be answered without cost. Sometimes mercy can become the spark of destruction. The fleet remained in silence, drifting above a world they could not save, unaware that the real danger was already spreading among them, quietly, invisibly, through the very systems that had carried their message of hope. Panic filled the human fleet as the silver swarm began to spread like wildfire. The moment they had feared had arrived. On the main screens of the command ship Erebus, Admiral Rourke watched in horror as the nanite clouds rose from the planet's surface, twisting upward like tornadoes of light. They moved unnaturally fast, shimmering as they climbed into the upper atmosphere. From orbit, the swarm looked like glowing rivers flowing into the sky, reaching toward the human ships as if they were alive and hungry. Every sensor showed the same terrible reading. The swarm was expanding, feeding on the energy signals from the fleet's engines and communications. What had started as a rescue mission was now a desperate fight to survive. "Cut power. All non-essential systems offline now," Rourke shouted. The crew obeyed immediately. Lights dimmed, engines slowed, and communications fell silent. But the swarm was already reacting to their presence. The first ship hit was the Haven, the medical vessel. Its outer hull began to shimmer as the nanites clung to it like silver dust. Within minutes, the dust turned into crawling veins that spread across the metal. Inside, the crew screamed as the walls began to melt. Engineers tried to activate emergency separation protocols, but the systems failed. The Haven sent one final message before disappearing in a burst of white light. "It's eating us from the inside." Then the transmission ended. On the Erebus, silence followed for several seconds. Everyone stared at the blank screen in disbelief. Dr. Lena Hart covered her mouth, trembling. "It's learning," she whispered. "It's adapting to our technology." The realization was terrifying. The swarm wasn't just destroying, it was thinking. Every second it was in contact with human machines. It was learning how they worked, how to reach them. Rourke ordered all ships to increase distance from the planet. The fleet broke formation, moving in different directions to confuse the swarm. But even that didn't help. The nanite cloud split apart and chased them, dividing like living predators. The smaller ships, slower and weaker, were the first to fall. Their engines glowed brightly for a few moments, then flickered out as their hulls dissolved into a cloud of silver ash. The void of space filled with the debris of human courage now turned into dust. Inside the Erebus, chaos reigned. The control room was filled with shouts, alarms, and flickering screens. "We're losing contact with the Odyssey. The science vessel is overrun," yelled one officer. "Communications are corrupted. The swarm's signal is infecting our systems," another screamed. Rourke's voice cut through the panic. "Shut down every frequency. Hardwire manual control. We're not dying here." Meanwhile, in the lower decks, Dr. Hart and her team were trying to find a solution. They had collected data from the surface earlier and now studied it, hoping to find a weakness in the nanite structure. One of her assistants discovered something strange. The swarm reacted violently to human energy frequencies, but there was a narrow band of radiation that seemed to confuse it. "If we could amplify this," the assistant said, "we might disrupt the swarm's signal." It was a fragile hope, but it was all they had. Rourke approved the plan. "Do it," he said. "You have 15 minutes." Every passing second felt like an eternity. Outside, the glowing storm grew brighter, moving closer. The swarm had already reached the upper orbit, where metallic fragments from destroyed ships drifted like snow. From the observation window, space looked like it was bleeding silver light. Dr. Hart and her team worked without rest. Sweat dripped down their faces as they tried to reroute power through the radiation emitters. The ship trembled around them. They could feel explosions from nearby vessels. One technician screamed as a console sparked and burst into flames. Still, they didn't stop. "If this works," Lena shouted, "it'll give us a chance to escape." Finally, the system came online. Rourke gave the order. "Activate the pulse." A blinding wave of blue energy shot out from the Erebus, spreading across space. For a brief, glorious moment, it worked. The swarm froze mid-motion, its glowing threads flickering like dying stars. The humans cheered, hope filling the dark halls again. "We did it," someone yelled. But the celebration was short-lived. The swarm began to move again, faster and angrier. The pulse hadn't destroyed it. It had made it stronger. The nanites adapted instantly, absorbing the radiation and using it as a new energy source. Dr. Hart's heart sank. "We've made it worse," she whispered. Rourke slammed his fist on the control panel. "All ships retreat now. Fall back to high orbit." Engines roared as what remained of the fleet pulled away from the planet. But several ships couldn't escape. The Odyssey sent one last desperate message. The swarm's inside the ship, it's rewriting the systems. Then its light vanished, leaving nothing behind. The survivors could only watch as the once great rescue fleet was reduced to glowing fragments. Out of 10 ships, only 4 remained functional. The rest were gone, consumed, destroyed, or drifting lifeless in space. Alaris, still on the surface, managed to contact the humans one final time. Her image appeared on the Erebus's damaged screen, flickering with static. Her eyes glowed faintly as she spoke. "You must leave," she said weakly. "Destroy this world before the swarm leaves it. If it reaches the stars, it will consume everything. Even you." Rourke clenched his fists. "We can't just wipe out an entire planet," he said. But Alaris shook her head gently. "The planet is already gone. What remains is only a shadow." Behind her, the ground rippled like water, the silver waves devouring the last of her city. She looked back at Rourke one last time and whispered, "Forgive us. Our creation became our curse. Then the signal cut off forever. Rourke stood still, silent. His crew waited for his command. The decision before him was impossible. To save his people, he would have to destroy an entire world. He had come to save life, not end it. But now compassion could cost humanity everything. Dr. Hart stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. "She's right," she said softly. "If we don't stop it now, it'll spread. This thing could reach Earth." Rourke closed his eyes. For a moment, he thought of the families back home, of the people who had watched the fleet launch with hope and pride. He thought of the Varelians who had once built beauty, only to watch it destroy them. Then he opened his eyes. His voice was calm but heavy with grief. "Prepare the purification sequence." The order echoed through every surviving ship. Crews moved silently, knowing what it meant. The Erebus and the remaining vessels began charging their fusion cores, preparing to unleash a blast powerful enough to vaporize the entire planet. Some officers hesitated, tears in their eyes. "Sir, there are still survivors down there," one said. Rourke's jaw tightened. "There are no survivors," he replied. "Only the swarm wearing their faces." As the countdown began, Dr. Hart walked to the observation deck. The planet below was glowing brighter now, its surface pulsing like a heartbeat. She imagined the Varelians' last moments, their art, their music, their laughter, all fading into silence. She whispered to herself, "We wanted to save them. And this is what saving looks like." The ships aligned in formation, their weapons aimed at the planet's core. The timer reached 0. "Fire!" Rourke commanded. The darkness of space exploded with light. A wave of white and gold energy tore through the void, striking the planet with unimaginable force. The explosion was silent, but every human felt it in their bones. The Varelian world cracked open, releasing a blinding flash that swallowed everything: the swarm, the ruins, the land itself. For a moment it looked as if a new sun had been born, then slowly it faded away, leaving only a field of quiet gray dust where a world had once been. When the light vanished, the humans stared in silence. No one spoke. The screens showed only empty space, glowing faintly with scattered debris. The mission was over, but victory felt like death. Rourke finally turned away from the window. His face looked older, worn by the weight of what he had done. "Send word to Earth," he said quietly. "Tell them. The Varelians are gone. The threat is contained." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Dr. Hart didn't move. She kept looking at the empty space, her reflection trembling in the glass. "We didn't just kill a species," she said softly. "We killed hope." No one answered her. Around them, the remaining ships drifted silently, engines dim as if mourning the world they had destroyed. Somewhere in the background, the faint static of the old SOS signal still echoed, repeating endlessly through the void. "Please help us. Please help us." A haunting reminder of how compassion, even when pure, can sometimes lead to ruin. For days, the fleet remained in orbit, ensuring the nanite swarm was truly gone. They scanned every inch of space, looking for even a trace of the living dust. Finally, when they were sure the planet was dead, Admiral Rourke gave the order to leave. The ships turned away, their lights flickering against the stars as they began the long journey home. In the quiet of his cabin, Rourke sat alone, staring at a small hologram of Earth. "We tried," he whispered. "God help us, we tried." But in his heart, he knew that the memory of Varelia would never fade. It would follow humanity forever. A ghostly voice carried through the endless dark, reminding them that even the greatest act of mercy can sometimes awaken the greatest of tragedies. The fleet returned home in silence. The stars that once looked beautiful now felt cold and distant. Every man and woman aboard those ships carried a heavy heart. They had left Earth full of hope, believing they were going to save lives, but they came back with the weight of an entire species' death on their souls. Admiral Rourke stood on the command deck of the Erebus, looking out at the blue curve of Earth appearing in the distance. It should have been a comforting sight, but it only reminded him of what had been lost. As the ships entered orbit, Earth's communication networks lit up. The whole planet had been waiting for good news. Billions of people watched the return of the human fleet, expecting stories of heroism and rescue. But when the transmissions came through, the truth shocked everyone. The mission logs, the recordings, the last moments of Varelia, everything was there. People cried as they saw the silver oceans devour alien cities, the desperate face of Ilaris, and the final explosion that ended it all. What had been called the Great Human Rescue turned into the Virelia tragedy. At first, some refused to believe it. How could humanity, the species that always fought to protect life, be responsible for the end of another civilization? But the evidence was undeniable. The Earth Defense Accord held emergency meetings for days, trying to explain what had happened. Scientists replayed the data again and again, confirming that the SOS signal itself had carried the deadly code that reawakened the swarm. Humanity hadn't meant to destroy. Their compassion had become the weapon that doomed the Virelians. When Admiral Rourke and Dr. Hart stepped onto Earth's surface again, reporters surrounded them shouting questions. Was it a mistake? Could it have been avoided? Why didn't you stop sooner? Rourke didn't answer. His face looked pale, his eyes hollow. Dr. Hart tried to speak, but her voice trembled. We tried to help, she whispered. We didn't know what we were waking up. The words did nothing to calm the storm. For weeks, the world argued. Some called Rourke a murderer. Others called him a hero who made the hardest choice. There were protests in the streets. Some demanded that humanity should never interfere with alien life again, while others insisted that they must learn how to do better next time. Philosophers, scientists, and leaders all debated one question. Was compassion still worth the risk? Rourke stayed away from the public eye. He retired quietly, refusing awards or honors. He moved to a small house by the ocean, far from cities and politics. Each morning he watched the sunrise over the water and thought of Virelia's shining seas, now turned to dust. At night he often woke from nightmares, hearing Alaris's voice echoing in his mind. You came, but it may already be too late. Dr. Hart continued her research, though her spirit was broken. She founded an institute dedicated to studying alien contact ethics, naming it the Alaris Foundation. She believed that understanding was the only way to prevent such tragedy again. Her lectures were simple but powerful. We thought compassion was enough. But without knowledge, compassion can destroy as easily as it can save. Her words inspired a new generation of scientists and diplomats. Years passed. The story of the Virelians became a lesson written in every Space Academy textbook. Students learned not just about engines and communication, but about humility and restraint. The universe is vast, the teachers would say, and not everything that calls for help can be saved. Sometimes the kindest hand can cause the deepest wound. Despite the pain, humanity grew wiser. The Earth Defense Accord created new laws called the Rourke Protocols, which required full analysis of any alien signal before any response was sent. They built special satellites designed to study messages from afar without physical contact. The next time the universe spoke, humanity would listen carefully, cautiously. But even with those precautions, fear remained. People looked to the stars differently now. The wonder was still there, but it was mixed with doubt. Space was no longer just a dream of discovery. It was a reminder of what had been lost. Admiral Rourke grew older, but the guilt never left him. Sometimes he would walk by the shore at night and stare at the horizon. The waves reminded him of the silver tides of Virelia. One evening, as the wind blew gently, he saw a shooting star streak across the sky. For a brief moment, he imagined it was Alaris, traveling among the stars, free from the plague, watching over him. He whispered softly, "I'm sorry." Back at the Alaris Foundation, Dr. Hart made an incredible discovery years later. While studying remnants of the SOS signal, she noticed something hidden deep in the data. An encrypted message, faint but deliberate. It wasn't part of the swarm's code. It was separate, almost like a farewell. When she decoded it, the message appeared in glowing letters. "We forgive you." She sat still for a long time, tears falling silently. She realized that even in their final hours, the Virelians had chosen to leave a message of peace, not anger. They understood that humanity had tried to save them, even if it ended in tragedy. Dr. Hart decided not to reveal the message to the world immediately. She wanted people to remember the lesson, not escape it through forgiveness, but she shared it privately with Rourke. When he read it, he didn't speak for a long time. Then he smiled weakly, the first smile in years, and whispered, "Thank you, Alaris." After that, he seemed lighter. He spent the last years of his life teaching young officers about the value of empathy, balanced with caution. "Never rush to save before you understand what you're saving," he would tell them. Sometimes the hardest part of leadership is knowing when not to act. 1 year later, when Rourke passed away quietly in his sleep, the Earth held a moment of silence. The flag of the Earth Defense Accord was lowered to half-mast, and the fleet he once commanded flew a formation through the sky, their lights blinking in quiet tribute. Dr. Hart, standing among the crowd, looked up and whispered. He carried the weight so others wouldn't have to. Decades went by. The tragedy became part of human history, remembered in art, songs, and literature. People painted the story of Virelia not as a tale of failure, but as one of painful wisdom. A sculpture was built at the United Earth Memorial Garden, a silver globe cracked in half, glowing faintly from within. The plaque below read, "To the Virelians whose silence taught us to listen." Then, one night long after Dr. Hart had retired, something extraordinary happened. Deep space sensors picked up another signal. It was faint, pulsing gently, coming from a distant system far beyond known space. The world froze as scientists analyzed it. The pattern was different this time. Not an SOS, not a cry for help. It was rhythmic, soft, like music. For days, the message played over and over. The younger generation wanted to respond immediately, excited by the possibility of contact. But the older leaders remembered the lesson of the past. They studied every frequency, every code, every sound. The Rourke protocols were followed strictly. After months of research, it became clear. The signal was peaceful, a greeting, not a warning. When the final report reached the Global Council, Dr. Hart, now an old woman, was invited to speak. Her voice was weak but steady as she addressed the world. This time, she said, we will answer, but with understanding, not haste. We will listen first, then act. The crowd cheered softly, but there was also a deep, quiet respect. Humanity had learned. As the new fleet prepared for launch, painted with the emblem of both Earth and Virelia, Dr. Hart stood by the viewing platform, watching them rise into the sky. The engines burned bright against the stars, just like before, but this time there was peace in her heart. She whispered, "We won't repeat the past. We'll honor it." And as the ships vanished into the void, the faint sound of the new signal played in the background, blending with the soft hum of the engines. Somewhere in the depths of space, perhaps another world was waiting, not to be saved, but to be understood. The memory of the Virelians lived on in every mission, every explorer, every decision made with care. Humanity's compassion had once doomed a species, but it also gave birth to wisdom that would guide generations forever. And so, even in silence, the voice of Alaris continued to echo through the stars, a gentle reminder that kindness, when guided by knowledge, can heal even the deepest scars of the universe.